My brother is a madman. To stop my wedding, he deliberately shattered his own leg. Later, my fiancé and my best friend murdered me. They slept together on the night of my wake, plotting to steal my dowry. But my crippled brother hunted them down like a rabid beast. Drenched in blood, he tossed their severed heads right before my coffin. He pulled my lifeless body into his arms, stroked my hair and whispered, "Little one, I am always here." Reborn. Yuza held me, urging me to slip a sleeping draught into Ming's tea. I shoved the man away. His smile sickened me. What did my brother do wrong? He just loves me too much. You just pour this powder into his cup. He never keeps his guard up around you. This drug could knock out a beast. Once he's out cold, we elope tonight. Okay. Yuza gave my wrist a gentle squeeze. But my mind wandered. My gaze drifted past his shoulder. Tree shadows swayed in the dark. Ming stood at the courtyard gate, dressed in a pure white robe, gripping a heavy bone cleaver. His eyes gleamed with dark obsession, watching us. By the time reality fully set in, Ming had already dragged me inside. Cleaver in his left hand, he searched the wall with his right. Finding no rope, he ripped off his own silk hairband and bound my wrists. "You are not to see Yuza," the man who had just told me to drug him. I let Ming tighten the knot. My chest ached with a sudden, overwhelming sadness. Even now, to keep from hurting me, he carefully slipped a soft handkerchief beneath the bindings. "Ming." I caught his fingers. He froze. In my past life, the mere thought of touching him made me sick. My sudden contact caught him completely off guard. Then he flipped his hand and clamped it over my mouth. "Shut up. If you plead for him again, I will kill him." A heavy, suffocating silence fell between us. That was exactly how my past life unraveled. Ming and I slowly tore each other apart. I loved Yuza to the point of madness. I never knew that while he was courting me, he was already sleeping with my treacherous best friend, Duanyua. They were plotting my murder to steal my fortune. I truly believed Yuza was my soulmate. I clung to him with desperate devotion. Ming tried everything to stop it. He warned me Yuza was a monster. Blinded by rage, I hurled vicious words at him. "You're insane, Ming." I had screamed. "Who locks up their own sister? Do you know why everyone avoids you? Because you're a freak. I hate you. I wish you were never my brother. I don't want you anymore." I can still see the dead, pale look in his eyes that day. He had his mother's hauntingly beautiful features, always carrying a fragile, shattering vulnerability. He just calmly tied me up. "Dinner is fish and tofu stew," he murmured. A heavy pause hung in the air. It was my favorite dish. Snapping back to the present, I found myself bound to a heavy wooden chair. Ming was in the kitchen cooking. Yes, he was a paranoid, obsessive madman. But was it his fault? He just never learned how to love me properly. While my mind wandered, Ming stepped out of the kitchen. He stood over me, staring down. "What is it, Ming?" I tilted my head back and smiled. "Why aren't you fighting me?" His voice carried a husky, lingering rasp. His voice was never raspy before. He ruined his vocal cords doing grueling manual labor just to keep me fed. "You don't need to tie me up, Ming," I said softly. "I'm never running away again. I wanted to stay right here. I wanted to heal the sickness in his heart." But Ming just glared at me with icy suspicion. Playing the soft card now since fighting didn't work? A tense silence stretched between us. He still thought I was plotting an escape. But he forgot his one fatal weakness. He could never resist my surrender. As he turned on his heel, his back rigid and resolute, I cleared my throat. I softened my pitch, letting out a fragile whine. "Ming, it hurts." He stopped dead in his tracks. Seconds later, my bindings were completely untied. Ming crouched before me, frantic, as if I had severed a limb. "Where does it hurt?" Should I fetch a doctor?" I didn't mean to. His hands hovered over me, trembling, terrified to touch me. I had screamed at him so many times before, forbidding him from coming near me. Whenever I played the victim, he lost all his power. I reached out. My fingertips brushed through his soft black hair. He froze, staring at me with a look of absolute shattering shock. I leaned down, gently tracing the corner of his eye. "Ming, in this life, let me protect you." I meant every word. Now that I was reborn, Yuza and my backstabbing friend were dead meat. Those two pieces of trash wouldn't get to live in peace. And they absolutely wouldn't get the chance to dirty Ming's hands again. A dark resolve settled in my chest. Yu, didn't I tell you to drug him yesterday? Yuza stood at the corner of the alley, his hands behind his back, glaring at me with a deep frown. In my past life, my obsession with him bordered on a hex. I was under his spell, so he always treated me like a subservient dog. If you don't knock him out tonight, don't even dream about me taking you away. In my previous life, I obeyed him. I laced Ming's drink, but Ming's body fought off the poison. He woke up halfway through my escape and desperately dragged himself out of bed to chase me. He tumbled down the steep attic stairs, snapping his leg in half. Even now, I can still picture his bloodshot eyes. Sprawled on the floor, crippled in agony, he still reached out, trying to keep me. "Don't go," he roared. "Come back. They are evil." His voice broke into a raw, bleeding rasp. "Trust me," he begged. "I would die before I ever lied to you." Only after death did the truth hit me. Someone in this world actually valued my life far more than his own. He was right. He would never lie to me. But in that past life, I merely saw him as a psychotic jailer trying to lock me away forever. I swallowed the bitter lump in my throat. Yuza clearly thought his threat to cancel the elopement would send me into a panic. Instead, I didn't even flinch. "This drug won't kill him, will it?" I asked blankly. Right on cue, my wonderful best friend Duanyua strolled over, conveniently holding a bowl of iced dessert. She sat beside me. "It's easy, you. Just watch the dosage. Make sure he sleeps like the dead." She smirked. "Besides, that jinx deserves to die anyway." Deserves to die? Would a man who deserves to die hunt down my killers to the ends of the earth? Would a man who deserves to die drag his crippled leg across continents just to avenge a sister who constantly defied and feared him? I knew exactly what kind of man Ming was. I looked up at them. It took everything in me not to rip them to shreds right then and there. But not yet. The timing wasn't right. I stared at the packet of powder in my hand. A dark, twisted plan was already forming in my mind. "You went to see Yuza again." The moment I stepped through the courtyard gate, I was yanked into a hard chest. His straight nose brushed against my neck. His breath was shallow, carrying the faint, sweet scent of locust flowers. In the dim candlelight, Ming's face was deathly pale. His striking features stood out like violent strokes of black ink on a fragile sheet of white paper. One touch and he might shatter. "Ming, I was just—" "Shut up," he snapped savagely. His knuckles dragged across my shoulder blade. The harsh, unfamiliar touch sent a violent shiver down my spine. But this time I didn't pull away. He reminded me of a lone wolf, desperately checking if the broken ragdoll he dragged home still belonged to him. I smiled. My fingers reached up to brush the messy hair from his forehead. Then I froze. He was burning up. His skin was scorching hot. Ming had a severe fever. Only then did I realize how ghastly pale he looked. He was clearly in agony, yet he kept his stubborn, burning gaze fixed on me. "Ming, why didn't you call for a doctor?" I grabbed his arms, my hands trembling. His voice was cold, razor-thin and raspy. "You promised you'd be back by sundown. I had to wait for you." Guilt crashed over me. It was already well past nightfall. Caught up in my own plotting, I had completely forgotten our promised time. And Ming, like an absolute fool, waited for me, even while his brain boiled with fever. Now Ming lay on the soft couch. He was giving me that exact same look of shattering disbelief. Because I was cooking dinner for him. For the very first time in my life. I was actually a brilliant cook. In my last life, I bent over backwards preparing elaborate meals to please Yuza. But toward Ming, I had only offered sneers and disgust. It took me years to find out that this obsessive madman had carefully preserved a half-eaten pastry I threw away, hoarding it like a treasure. The shrimp and scallop congee was cooked to perfection. I blew on it gently, then lifted a spoonful to Ming's thin lips. He stared at me. His eyes were dark, clouded with suspicion, expecting poison. "Are you going to eat it or not?" I asked, completely unfazed. Slowly, he opened his mouth and took the spoon. His eyelashes fluttered down. He looked surprisingly docile. Staring at his pale forearm with its faint blue veins, I found it hard to imagine how those very hands had hacked off the heads of Yuza and my backstabbing friend. Ming, have you ever thought about our future? I asked softly as he swallowed the warm food. I'm coming of age and you don't have a stable trade. Let's sell this old courtyard and move south to the river towns. I want to open a flower shop. In my previous life, my future never included him. The word I barked at him the most was scram. Yet he was the one who raised me. He was the one who sacrificed everything he had for my sake. Do you not like flowers, Ming? I leaned in closer. But you always smell like sweet locust blossoms. Before I could finish, his hand shot up. His fingers clamped hard around my chin. His rough thumb brushed fiercely against my lower lip. His gaze was blazing, dripping with raw, naked possessiveness. What are you trying to do? He rasped. The South? A flower shop? Is that just an easier way for you to run away? Stop lying to me, you. Please. He sounded delirious. You know damn well the moment we get somewhere new, the very first thing you do is throw me away. Silence choked the room. He was telling the truth. In my last life, I absolutely would have done that. Ming was a cornered beast, terrified of being hurt again. I wanted him to trust me, but to him, I was just a venomous viper luring him into another trap. I had lied to him and stripped him bare far too many times. We stared at each other in the suffocating quiet of the empty room. You need to prove it, he demanded, his eyes piercing into mine. Prove it how? I asked. The candle flickered violently. Suddenly it blew out. The room plunged into pitch black. And very quickly, I learned exactly how he wanted me to prove it. I crashed into a solid burning chest. A large hand gripped the small of my back, searing hot. He let out a low guttural groan in the dark. Then his fingers seized my chin. His lips crashed down on mine. He was burning up with fever. His hands, his mouth, his skin. Everything was scorching. His fingers tangled in the hair at the nape of my neck as he devoured my mouth, the blistering heat of his tongue making my senses go numb. My brother was kissing me. His mouth trailed wetly from my eyes down to the sensitive skin below my ear. His unnatural feverish heat lighting my nerves on fire. Ming probably expected me to fight. In my past life, I would have struggled desperately, thoroughly repulsed, eager to escape him. But now, as his burning breath washed over me, I remembered him dragging his broken leg step by step to avenge me. I remembered him holding my cold corpse, his eyes red as he called me his little one. Once you die, your heart softens. I couldn't bear to push him away anymore. He never imagined that, as his mouth swallowed mine, I would fist my hands in his collar and fiercely kiss him back. His breath hitched, completely unraveling. He pulled back slightly, tipping my chin up so he could rest his burning forehead against mine. He nuzzled me gently in the dark. I strained to hear his hoarse, broken whisper. In that fractured moment, I finally understood who was truly trapped. Prove it like this, he breathed. Please, don't leave me. I vigorously scrubbed the last bowl in the kitchen. Ming was waiting in the main hall. Honestly, I was hiding. Things had escalated way too fast. Ming and I had just crossed a line we never dared to touch in my past life. I always knew his feelings for me went far beyond family. We weren't blood-related after all. But for years, he had kept his dark desires locked away. He wanted to devour me, yet he never dared. Even with the wisdom of 2 lifetimes, I had no idea how to face him now. While I was still agonizing over it, Ming pushed the door open. He strolled in as if nothing had happened. Have a sip. He caged me against the wooden wash basin. He held a cup of warm milk, tipping it to my lips. I did have a habit of drinking milk before bed, but he had clearly already drunk from this cup. Aligning my mouth with his lip mark, I took a sip. Good girl, he murmured, petting my hair. Ming, I whispered, your kissing technique needs some work. What? He let out a low chuckle. I said. I spun around to face him. Before I could finish, he dipped his head and caught me completely off guard, pressing a firm kiss to the corner of my mouth. A jolt of electricity shot through me. I grabbed fistfuls of his collar. Ming, do you finally believe me? I murmured. I'm not going to run. Look at me. I've surrendered everything to you. But the man leaning over me just stared, his expression unreadable. Suddenly, my head felt impossibly heavy. I blinked up at him, my vision blurring. I was so dizzy. The milk? Ming cupped my face in his large hands. His callous thumbs gently stroked my drooping eyelids. I couldn't move a muscle. He had spiked the milk. Ming's voice sounded like it was drifting down from a million miles away. You played your part beautifully this time, you. His tone was chillingly calm. But you shouldn't have hidden the powder so loosely in your pouch. It fell out. A cold pause. You almost succeeded in killing me. Crap. Ming misunderstood. I kept the sleeping powder in my pouch to have a doctor test it. I needed concrete proof of Yu's murderous plot. But Ming thought I was trying to drug him. He thought my complete surrender just now was a desperate sacrificial act. I wanted to explain, but my tongue felt like lead. My eyelids drooped. What a mess. I reached for him, but Ming slapped my hand away. Do you really hate me that much? He asked. You tricked me once. Did you think you could do it again? My brain spun. Something tight wrapped around my neck, choking off my breath. I couldn't move a muscle. Ming was tying me up. Ming. I looked at him helplessly. You have to let me explain. A suffocating silence filled the room. Ming stared down at me, his face a blank mask. He was tall and lean, looking as fragile as glass. But he possessed terrifying strength. I knew exactly what he was capable of. Whether it was butchering those two traitors in my past life or handling a disobedient sister in this one. His pale, icy knuckles brushed against my ear. Ming, I called out. Shut up. The command cracked with a raspy edge. He leaned down and kissed me. His long eyelashes fluttered against my cheek, sending a shiver through me. I couldn't move. Even his gentlest touch was too much to bear. I loved him, so my body instinctively yielded. But as his scent completely overwhelmed my senses, a final shred of logic yanked me back from the abyss. I wasn't here to play kissing games with him. Ming. I broke off, coughing violently. He pulled back, clearly annoyed, but still reached out to rub my back. Choking, he mocked. And you said my technique needed work. His tone was sharp, dripping with fury. He truly believed I had betrayed him. Anger flared in my chest. You're the one who doesn't trust me. I shot back. Yuza gave me that powder. He wanted me to knock you out. I took it so I could bring it to a doctor for evidence. You just refused to believe me. I threw my head back and glared at him. Ming leaned in to kiss me again. My explanation had completely gone in one ear and out the other. I wrenched my face away. He raised an eyebrow. A soft, mocking sound escaped his lips. He leaned in close, his breath tickling my ear. Right. The drug was for the doctor. Not to poison me. His voice dropped. What's next, you? Are you going to tell me you did all this for me? Have you ever loved me? Even a little. His expression remained cool, but his eyes looked completely shattered. I opened my mouth, but the words died in my throat. I couldn't blame him. In my frantic attempts to escape him before, I had spiked his breakfast with sedatives. I stuffed lime powder in his bags. I falsely accused him of theft and called the guards on him. Half his terrible reputation in the neighborhood was entirely my fault. He spent years cleaning up my vicious messes. Of course he couldn't change his view of me overnight. I had to swallow my pride. So I lunged forward. I smashed my lips against his. His mouth was soft. He froze completely. The dark void in his eyes suddenly exploded into a kaleidoscope of colors. And then Ming completely lost his mind. He shoved me back onto the bed, his large hand quickly cupping the back of my head to break the fall. The mattress sank under our weight. I yielded entirely, finding his hand in the dark and lacing our fingers together. He buried his face in my neck, pressing bruising kisses against my skin. You are going to torture me to death, he groaned. In my past life, I owed Ming a massive debt. I wasn't sure if I could completely heal his broken mind in this one, but I could definitely promise to mutually torture him for the rest of our lives. Ming was an amazing cook. Though the meal would have been much better if he wasn't spoon-feeding me while my hands were still bound. Ming. I drew out his name in a sweet whine. The silver spoon stopped inches from my lips. You, he stated flatly. The last time you acted this sweet, you almost sent me to prison. He was merely stating a fact. Under the table, I slid my foot forward and slowly ran it up his calf. He flinched. A faint blush crept up his pale cheeks. So innocent. If he hadn't just pinned me to the bed and devoured me like a starving wolf, I might have actually bought the shy act. Ming, do you believe in fate? I asked. I had a dream last night. About the future. I dreamt I married Yuza and you broke your leg. Then Yuza and Duanyua conspired to murder me. You dragged your crippled leg and hunted them down across thousands of miles. That's why I hate Yuza now. I stared straight into his eyes, speaking with absolute raw sincerity. His face remained completely impassive. His beautiful eyes were like dark, bottomless mirrors. I couldn't read his mind at all. Oh, is that so? He whispered. He leaned in, his hot breath grazing my neck. What a coincidence. I had a dream last night too. I dreamt my sister would do anything to escape me. So she spun a beautiful lie. She intoxicated me with sweet promises and then threw me away like trash. A cold chill ran down my spine. For a second I thought he had been reborn too. Because in my past life that was exactly how I played him before I drugged his drink. I still remembered his red-rimmed eyes as he gripped my wrists and pulled me into a desperate hug. He had begged me not to leave him. Then I drugged him. And he broke his leg chasing me. If that was his dream, no wonder this lunatic wanted to keep me chained up. I let out a soft laugh. He frowned at me. Forget it, Ming, I whispered. Do whatever you want to me. I'm willing. I promised myself this would be the absolute last time I lied to him. During my bath, I deliberately mixed in freezing water. I stood right in front of the draft with soaking wet hair, letting the icy wind hit my scalp. My constitution had always been weak. When a sharp chill shot straight to my brain and my nose began to run, I knew the cold had set in. Catching a fever would just depend on my luck. I stepped out of the washroom, towel drying my hair. Ming sat on the soft couch, his dark eyes locked onto me. I walked over, let out a dramatic gasp, and collapsed right into his lap. Even though I caught him off guard, his arms instantly flew up to catch me. I felt like a wicked vixen seducing a pure scholar. But Ming's gaze was as stoic as a monk's. Go to sleep, he ordered. His voice was freezing. I pinched his thigh. This wasn't like him. He quickly caught my hand and pinned it down. I stared at his bobbing Adam's apple. Why are you ignoring me? I pouted. Stop moving. Go to bed. This time his voice carried a sharp warning. I'm treating you so well, and you don't even like it? I shifted in his lap, reaching up to trace his throat. His pupils dilated. A low groan rumbled in his chest. He's holding back again. Fine. I guess I won't be so nice next time, I teased. You're the one pushing me away, Ming. Look at you rejecting your own. A familiar, forceful grip seized the back of my neck. My words were swallowed as his mouth crashed down on mine. The bastard just didn't want me to talk anymore. Sometimes I truly pitied him. I was the one wearing the bindings, but he was the one truly trapped. I looped my arms around his neck. Are you scared, Ming? He nodded silently against my chest. You've been acting too strange lately, Yu, he rasped. I'm terrified this is all a trap. But you know what? Even if you dug a grave right in front of me and smiled, telling me to jump in. His voice broke. I would jump without hesitation. Midnight. I felt so awful I couldn't sleep. I knocked on Ming's door. Ming, I think I have a fever. My vision blurred. Looking up at him, a sudden thought drifted through my hazy mind. He was insanely handsome. If he were in an academy, he would have hordes of girls throwing themselves at him. It was such a tragedy that he had ruined his life for me. He scooped me up into his arms in one fluid motion. To the clinic. No hesitation. He wrapped his heavy cloak tightly around me and pressed a hand to my forehead. I felt his fingers tremble. I must have been burning up. Ming always lost his mind whenever I was hurt. He was too perfect, so heaven gave him a fatal weakness, me. His entire life was left in ruins because of me. Inside the carriage, I leaned my head on his shoulder. I was genuinely freezing, huddling deep inside his cloak. I held his hand, tracing the raised veins on his knuckles. Does it still hurt? He asked frantically. We're almost there. He was terrified my brain was frying from the heat. I wanted to tell him I was fine. I did this to myself on purpose. But I didn't dare face the devastation in his eyes if he found out the truth. Ming sprinted into the clinic, carrying me the whole way. He gently set me down on a wooden chair in the waiting hall. He adjusted my collar, crouching before me like I was a fragile doll. "Little one," he coaxed softly. "I'm going to pay the doctor and get your medicine. I'll be right back. Be good. You'll feel better once you drink it." I buried half my face in his cloak, looking at him with wide eyes, and nodded. He patted my head, hooking a finger under my collar. He pulled me in for a quick, desperate kiss on the corner of my mouth. I watched his figure rush away down the hall. He clearly wanted to get back to my side as fast as humanly possible. But I tossed his heavy cloak onto the chair. I turned on my heel and slipped out into the vast, dark night. I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. Maybe one day he would realize my love for him was real. But I was running out of time. I couldn't afford to let Yuza and Duanyua lose their patience. I had finally managed to gather a fraction of the evidence against their murderous plot. It was almost dawn. The eastern sky was turning a pale gray. I sent out the secret signal to contact Yuza. He didn't answer. Makes sense. Anyone sane would be fast asleep at this hour. At the same time, my thoughts kept drifting. How frantic would Ming be when he found me gone? When I was little, I got lost at a lantern festival. I stood crying in the sea of people until Ming violently shoved his way through the crowd. He scooped me into his arms, trembling like a leaf. Ever since then, he always knew exactly where to find me. Right up until my past life, when he shattered his leg and I left him behind without a single glance back. A sudden owl hoot from a dark alley snapped me out of my memories. It was Yuza. I followed the sound to the other side of a high brick wall. "You escaped?" a voice asked from the other side. A strange pause lingered before he spoke. "Yes. Ming is being difficult," I hissed. "He took the sleeping powder. Can you get me another dose?" "Don't worry, he's dropped his guard around me. It'll definitely work this time." To kill Yuza's suspicions, I had to act like I absolutely despised my brother. But something was off about Yuza today. He was intentionally lowering his voice. He sounded like a completely different person. This was bad. It meant Yuza was starting to doubt me. One wrong move and I could shatter the timeline of my rebirth entirely. "Why should I believe you?" the voice demanded. "Yuza, since when do we talk about trust?" I scoffed. He was definitely onto something. I had to up the stakes. I took a deep breath and delivered the fatal line. "I'm in love with you. Don't you know that?" Another long, heavy silence from the other side of the wall. Then he asked, "What about your brother? I need to be sure he hasn't bought your loyalty." "Ming." I spat out a cold laugh. "I can't even stand to look at him. He's just a rabid dog that won't stop clinging to me. The day he dies, I'll set off fireworks to celebrate." Lies. Nothing but filthy lies. I squeezed my eyes shut, silently apologizing to him in my heart. The voice on the other side finally seemed satisfied. He gave me a location. The abandoned courtyard at the end of Willow Lane in the South City. A pause. "Be careful. Yuza and my backstabbing friend Duanyua were definitely running a murderous scam. I even suspected they had conspired to steal other people's fortunes long before they met me. So, before heading to the meeting spot, I bribed an informant from the black market to hide in the shadows and document their crimes." I tilted my head up to look at the pre-dawn sky. 45 crimson flares had been shot into the air. All of them fired by Ming, searching for me like a complete madman. The meeting point was an abandoned warehouse. Yuza was always cautious. He was supposed to be eloping with me, but he acted like he was running an underground crime ring. I really was oblivious in my past life. Dawn was creeping in. Faint light filtered through the broken window frames. My head still felt heavy, spinning with fever. I just wanted to get the evidence and hand him over to the authorities. But Ming, my brother. My thoughts derailed, spinning violently in my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about him. One moment of betrayal, one moment of distance, and I was already suffocating. I didn't want to lie to him anymore. I regretted everything. I stopped dead at the end of the warehouse. The sun was rising. A man was tied tightly to a wooden chair, a rag stuffed in his mouth, muffling his grunts. It was Yuza, and behind him stood Ming. He had his arms crossed, his fingers toying with a familiar bone whistle. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Ming had tied him up. He had finally learned to cut the problem off at the root. No wonder the person who spoke to me through the wall wasn't Yuza, it was Ming. What had I told him over the wall just minutes ago? I had said, "My brother? I can't even stand to look at him. He's just a rabid dog that won't stop clinging to me. The day he dies, I'll set off fireworks to celebrate." I was dead. The rising sun cast a sharp, dividing line between us. I stood there, my throat dry and aching. Ming. He tilted his head. His beautiful eyes reflected me, utterly empty of warmth. Planning to beg for his life? He kicked the man in the chair. Yuza looked terrified, staring at me, his eyes screaming for help. What a pathetic coward. Ming, let's be clear. I'm not on his side. I took a step forward. But we can't commit crimes. So you are begging for his life? He cut me off. He felt so like a stranger. I never imagined Ming would look at me with such eyes. Flat. Cold. Silent. What could I say? If I tried to explain, he wouldn't believe me, and everything would just spiral further into a twisted mess. The thread holding us together was snapping. I expected him to explode, to roar at me, to tie me up and drag me home to settle the score. He did none of those things. His calm terrified me. It felt like sinking into a lifeless, bottomless swamp. A long moment passed before I heard him sigh. "You, do you know? I love you. I'm scared of so many things. Everything revolves around you. I'm afraid of you getting hurt, afraid of you turning dark, afraid of you leaving. For days I've wondered how much you truly hate me. Enough to sacrifice your own life just to spite me. I finally realized. No matter how hard I tie you down, you'll still leave. So, I won't stop you anymore." He shoved Yuza to the ground. The sunrise snatched Ming's silhouette away, but I caught his final words. "Go and live your life with him. Remember to see a doctor for your fever. I won't be seeing you off." I stood frozen. Took me ages to process. He was letting me go. In the cavernous warehouse, Yuza was on the verge of tears, moved to the core. I knew it. I knew you loved me. Your brother is a maniac. Call the guards, quick. Arrest him." I kicked his chair over. Who does he think he's talking to? Yuza wouldn't dare call the guards. He was the one running an illegal trade. He groaned on the floor, begging me to untie him. I ignored him. After a split second of hesitation, I bolted out of the warehouse. I had to chase him. Ming had been the one to pamper me my entire life. He couldn't just give up on me. I didn't know where he went, so I headed home. Now the roles were reversed. I couldn't find a trace of him. Life was funny that way. In the carriage back, I started writing him a long letter, only to tear it into tiny pieces. I realized I'd been infected by his madness. I was losing my mind too. Every second he wasn't in my sight, he was the only thing I could think about. I finally found him. Not at home, but at a noodle stall in the alleyway near our house. I stopped at the entrance. I stepped forward, then froze in the dawn light. The stall was empty. Ming stood there in his dark gear. His features were sharp, his skin a cold, ghostly pale. He handed a few copper coins to the stall owner. A young girl working there was stealing shy glances at him. Ming actually tilted his head and smiled at her. My heart shattered. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed it until I couldn't breathe. Ming stepped out of the stall. He looked surprised to see me. A faint light hit his eyes. I stood right in his path. He tilted his head. Out of the way. He looked at me like I was a complete stranger. I crumbled. "Ming." My voice broke, cracking with emotion. I watched his pupils dilate. He pulled me into his arms, his thumb brushing my cheek. "Why are you crying? Stop it. I was wrong. It's my fault. Please stop crying." He dropped whatever he was holding on the ground. He just wanted to wipe away my tears. I looked at him, choking back sobs. "I've had no parents since I was a child. And now you're abandoning me too. Ming, how could you be so cruel?" Okay, I was wrong," he murmured, pulling me closer. "You really are my little ancestor. Stop crying, please." But I couldn't stop. I sobbed until my nose felt blocked, and that was when I realized the fever had fully set in. My body's defenses were launching a full-scale assault. My head swam. I'd been dragged through hell for 24 hours without a drop of medicine. My consciousness slipped. As I clung to his sleeve, the last thing I heard was Ming screaming my name in a panic. My eyes were covered, a black cloth blind. With my sight gone, every other sense exploded in intensity. Someone brushed the hair from my forehead and touched my head. Rough, callous fingertips. It was Ming. Ming! I whispered. He didn't answer. He reached down to undo my collar. He traced the line of my throat. I shivered. He rubbed my earlobe. Be good. I'm checking your temperature. Ming. Why cover my eyes? Because, he breathed. His breath against my ear was 1,000 times more intense than usual. My heart hammered against my ribs. I have to punish you. I have a fever, Ming. My wrists were gently bound, so I had to chase the sound of his voice. He fell silent. I could only hear the friction of bedsheets and clothes, and the feeling of silk being wrapped tightly around my wrists. It didn't hurt. It wasn't sad. It just ached exactly the way Ming made me feel. Ming, I was wrong, I pleaded. He gave a low hum. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. He pulled the thermometer from my armpit, checking the numbers. What did you do wrong? He asked. I shouldn't have lied to you. I shouldn't have stayed in contact with Yuza. But Ming, you have to believe me, I was trying to. A warm touch landed on my forehead. He was checking my fever with his own. Wrong, he interrupted. Yu, I wasn't mad that you lied to me. I was mad that you deliberately let yourself get sick. Yu, do you understand? He used his knees to push my legs apart. You hurt yourself. For me. So I want to kill myself. Ming always said everyone's world was different. His world contained only me. So don't make Ming sad. Don't make Ming suffer anymore, okay? His kisses landed on my neck, wet and frantic. I'm afraid that one day I'll go truly insane. And I won't be able to protect you anymore. I felt his teeth graze my skin. His voice morphed into a pained, guttural groan. Bring a knife to my throat. Break my legs. What else can I do? I'll gladly take it all. But you're sick. You're hurting. You're uncomfortable. What do you want me to do? I'm going crazy. Please torture me instead. Just don't hurt yourself. Looking back, Ming had always been like this, even when he was covered in blood. He would always hold me tight. I gripped his neck. But I love you too, Ming. You need to trust me more. I love you. The words hit the air like a fireworks display. I felt him freeze. A second later I regretted it. My brother was too insane. Tears spilled over, a physiological reaction I couldn't stop. My heart was crushed. At that moment I finally understood. His pain was inextricably linked to mine. His kiss landed directly over my heart. Plundering. Claiming. Creatures of the abyss are all the same. We cannot crave the light, so we steal whatever dim glimmer we can from each other. As a child I was terrified of the dark, terrified of falling into the bottomless void. But if Ming was the abyss itself, I would gladly drown in it. Ming! I whispered his name, drifting in a haze. He tore the black silk blindfold away. I stared into his deep dark eyes. They were shining, brighter than the most ancient stars in the night sky. The heat burned into my heart, bringing tears to my eyes. His teeth nipped sharply at the skin of my neck. You once called me your dog. His voice was a low growl. So what is this mad dog doing to you now? He claimed he didn't hold grudges. He was lying. He was petty to the bone. Morning light touched the quilt. I shifted my arm, but he only pulled me tighter. Other girls had brothers who treated them with gentle, soft care. Mine clung to me like a parasitic vine, desperate and suffocating. His sharp nose rubbed against my neck, right over the red marks he'd left behind. It stung, but I didn't pull away. Ming, you were so intense last night, I teased. I thought you'd be too gentle to leave me like this. He chuckled against my skin, his voice thick with a heavy morning rasp, vibrating against my chest. My fault. I couldn't help myself. An apology without a single shred of remorse. Want me to make it up to you? He lifted me, straddling my legs over his. Morning light caught his sharp features. He squinted, his palm pressing into my waist. He looked like a fallen deity carved by a master. I leaned down and bit his shoulder. He reached up, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. I ground my teeth, remembering how he'd bullied me last night. Fueled by spite, I bit down harder. He hissed. "Take it," I commanded, my hand gripping his neck. He nodded, perfectly obedient. I stared at the teeth marks I'd left on his shoulder. Deep. Perfect. I couldn't help but smirk. I hadn't even finished admiring my work when he yanked the quilt back over us. Darkness swallowed us, heavy with his intoxicating scent. His kisses trailed down my spine like the lingering notes of a midnight symphony. It was absolute torture. Ming caught a cold. He completely had it coming. Neither of us had ever been sturdy. Now that I was fully recovered, there he was, wrapped in a heavy cloak, sniffling. "Should we see a doctor?" I touched his forehead. "I'm fine," he muttered, nuzzling my palm. "Yuza is almost certainly tied to the underground black market. He's slippery. I've been tracking him since long before you made your move. It's just a shame we're still missing the final damning evidence." As expected, in both lives Ming had secretly investigated Yuza, but clearly he hadn't been able to nail him down either time. He'd been looking at the illegal drug angle, but Yuza was likely plotting something far more sinister. I tugged his sleeve. "I think Yuza and Duanyue are colluding to murder me for my fortune." Ming froze. "You mean?" "Duanyue befriended me first. Then Yuza stepped in. They get close to me, marry me, poison me, and swallow my dowry." It was a wild theory, but Ming's gaze darkened into absolute murder, especially at the word poison. "Their identities and travel permits are probably all forgeries," I continued. "Ming, try looking into that." Ming stared at me for a long time, then let out a low chuckle. "What? Trying to be a little investigator now?" I rolled my eyes. In reality, Ming's trade really was undercover investigation. He was a shadow fixer, a mercenary who solved problems for money, but it was nothing like the heroic tales of wandering swordsmen. I loathed the work he did. It was blood money. He was brilliant, but he had no formal standing. When we were young, we only had enough silver for one of us to attend the academy. I went. He took the dark jobs to feed me. There were days he came home reeking of blood. I only later found out he was fighting death matches in underground rings. Undercover investigator? Please. He was a desperate man who would take any lethal job as long as the price was right. You. His thick, nasal voice pulled me back to the present. I looked up. He caught me completely off guard, wrapping a heavy foxfur scarf tightly around my neck. He kissed me through the thick wool. "Thank you for standing by my side." I froze, a sudden lump forming in my throat. I had always been on his side, and I was never going anywhere ever again. You absolute idiot. Winter passed, and the first spring blossom budded. I stood by the window, counting the icicles hanging from the eaves. The heated floors kept the bitter cold at bay, but frost coated the window panes. A little girl sat at the desk nearby, practicing her lessons. This was my last gig before my supposed marriage, a private tutor for beginners. I looked out the partially open window. Faint light danced on the melting snow. Someone was leaning against the old locust tree by the alley, watching me. Ming wore a pale moon-white robe. His skin was so fair he nearly blended into the endless snow, standing so far away. I couldn't tell if he was lost in thought or staring right at me. A servant boy ran up and handed me a note. It was his handwriting. Stop staring at me, Teacher Liu. Focus on your lesson. That little girl beside you is bursting with curiosity. Asterisk. A flush crept up my neck. I stayed silent, turning back to the girl. She was beaming with bright, inquisitive eyes. "Teacher, what's the story with that handsome man outside? Is he your intended?" I just smiled and ruffled her hair. My attention returned to the scrolls. The piled snow melted slowly, marking the quiet passage of a silent winter. Walking out the gate, the melting snow crunched beneath my boots. Ming saw me and opened his arms. "Careful." I slipped on a patch of black ice and crashed right into his chest. He caught me effortlessly, his strong arms wrapping firmly around my waist. I stayed exactly where I was, safely enveloped in his embrace as our breaths misted into the freezing air. He pulled up the hood of my foxfur cloak, cinching it tight against the wind. Hidden in the dim shadow of the hood, he leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to my lips. On the walk home, he held my hand tightly. He acted like he was just keeping me from slipping on the black ice. I would never admit I just craved his warmth. Do you remember the old town we used to live in? He asked, his voice cutting through the chill. We hadn't always lived in the capital. After our parents vanished, Ming dragged me here to start over. The old investigator who handled their disappearance just got transferred here. He paused, his breath pluming in the cold. I ran into him 2 days ago. My heart violently seized. I opened my mouth, but the words died in my throat. I squeezed his hand instead. Don't worry. His low voice melted into the driving snow. I tipped off the guards about Yuza. He's probably just coming to say thank you. We reached our gates. A plainclothes investigator stood waiting in the freezing wind, a heavy blade strapped to his waist. His hair had gone half-gray since the last time I saw him, but his eyes were still sharp as a hawk. The years had only made him more dangerous. The veteran officer's gaze dropped to our intertwined fingers. A knowing, calculating smirk touched his lips. It's been a long time. You two are still as close as ever, I see. It's been what, 7 years? He stepped closer. You and Ming. After all this time, neither of you has changed a bit. Ming and I sat together on the low couch in the main hall. Investigator Wang smiled at us. The deep wrinkles around his eyes crinkled. He looked so warm and friendly, making it impossible to read his true intentions. I remember when I first took your parents' case. Your sister was still in the academy. He gestured to his waist. I was just a rookie back then. And yet, to this day, I still haven't solved their disappearance. It's been the one massive regret of my entire career. I absolutely loathe dealing with veteran investigators. They were masters of manipulation, experts at tearing open a person's darkest secrets. But Ming was clearly far better at this game than I was. Investigator Wang, is that official reward plaque for me? Ming asked, his voice smooth and pleasant. I only did the guards a small favor. You really didn't need to come all this way. Ming kept a polite smile plastered on his face, but the older man just stared him down. After a long suffocating pause, Wang chuckled. Thank you for helping us capture Yuza and his accomplices. The trial starts next month. You two are welcome to attend the hearing if you're interested. Here, your reward. He held out the wooden plaque. Ming reached for it, but halfway there Wang pulled it back slightly. But speaking of old times, it's been years since your parents vanished. Have you two remembered any new clues? I shot to my feet. The sudden movement rattled the tea table. Wang watched me with intense, predatory interest. Ming immediately reached out, his hand firmly gripping my waist to steady me. Excuse me, I blurted out. The water in the kitchen should be boiling. Let me brew you some tea. I practically fled the room. I yanked the heavy wooden kitchen door open, slammed it shut, and leaned over the stone sink, gasping for air. My heart hammered against my ribs. The sun was setting, casting me in long fading shadows. The water in the basin rippled with my trembling. This was wrong. This didn't happen in my past life. Why was this cold case being dug up now? Was it because I gave Ming the tip about Yuza? Did his chance encounter with Wang alter our fate? Ming and I were finally settling down. We were finally living a normal life. Please God. No. I dug my fingernails into my palms, using the sharp pain to claw back my sanity. Muffled voices drifted from the main hall. My sister has always been timid. You know our history. You frightened her, Ming stated. His tone was perfectly flat, yielding absolutely nothing. Oh? Honestly, I've always found it a bit strange. Wang's voice turned lethal. Your parents disappear, yet neither of you seem to care. Do you think they're still alive out there? Hiding somewhere? Or do you think they're already dead? It was a blatant trap. A calculated provocation. A suffocating silence hung in the air. Then I heard Ming speak. I think they're dead. Oh, Wang prompted. If my father were alive, that degenerate gambler would have smashed everything I own just to sell off this house to pay his debts. If my mother were alive, she would have dragged my sister out of the academy and sold her to a brothel. So whether they are dead or alive, I pray that they are dead. Wang didn't say a single word for a very long time. Using your own tragedy to shut me up, boy? Wang finally muttered. Think whatever you want, Ming replied coldly. Yu has been in the kitchen too long. I'm going to check on her. Footsteps approached. The heavy wooden door creaked open. Ming stepped inside and instantly pulled me into his arms. Only then did I realize I was violently shivering. I looked up. The boundary between light and dark was violently clear. We had always belonged to the shadows. The main hall where Wang sat was bathed in bright, warm candlelight. But our kitchen couldn't hold on to the last rays of the dying sun. We were swallowed whole by a damp, suffocating cage. Wang's voice boomed from the hall. The law does not care about your tragic past. Dead or alive, someone is responsible for their disappearance. And I will hunt down the culprit. That is my absolute duty. I flinched. Ming let out a dark, mocking scoff. He tilted my chin up and kissed me. It was absolute heresy. Out in the hall, the investigator was loudly preaching about justice and the law. But here in the pitch-black kitchen, my brother's hand slipped beneath my clothes. He gripped my waist. His lips devoured my nose, my mouth, my neck. He whispered dark, filthy devotions against my skin, doing the most sinful things imaginable. My vision swayed. I caught a glimpse of the bright candlelight bleeding in from the hall. Maybe I was already burning in the deepest pits of hell. That was why I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore, and why I absolutely despised the light. May brought the deafening cicadas of early summer. I sat outside the magistrate's office. Guards and commoners bustled past me. Finally, I spotted the man with half-gray hair. Investigator Wang. Even in his middle age, he was full of relentless energy. He stretched his back, his official badge swinging from his belt. Then he saw me. Well, if it isn't you. He smirked. You've been looking for this old man quite a lot lately. I handed him a cup of herbal tea. He muttered about not liking young people's drinks, but he chugged it anyway. So what is it? I heard you're getting married soon. Where's that brother of yours? I ignored his question. The authorities are claiming the land where our old house stands, I stated flatly. He raised an eyebrow. Oh, that rundown courtyard? That's great news. The government is expanding that district. You should get a hefty sum of silver for it. Silence stretched between us. I stared quietly up at him. When I was little, my parents beat me constantly. The blood-red sunset reflected in my eyes. I watched the veteran investigator's expression harden into stone. I was young, ignorant. When the beatings hurt too much. I paused, holding his gaze. Maybe it's entirely possible I did something unforgivable. The smile completely vanished from Wang's face. Investigators were always too sharp. His worldly, calculating brain was probably running through 10,000 horrific scenarios. I turned around, and I walked away. When I returned to the estate, Ming had already prepared a table full of food. I had told him I would be done with classes by mid-afternoon. It was already dusk. A sudden memory hit me. Right after I was reborn, Ming had waited for me on the soft couch exactly like this. I walked up to him and took his hand. Ming. He looked like he was sealed within the sinking, bleeding sunset. He gripped my wrist and pulled me into his arms. Where did you go? To see Investigator Wang. I had promised never to lie to him again. He let out a heavy sigh and ruffled my hair. Idiot. So many words could be hidden in a single gesture. Like the way he lifted me and kissed me. Like the way his fingers tangled in my hair over and over. If everything in the world had a temperature, I hated this scorching summer. Dinner first? He rasped against my lips, brushing the stray hairs from my forehead. I hooked my arms tighter around his neck. What are we eating, Ming? Food. Ming. Our words tangled together into nonsense. He looked down at me, then crushed me against his chest. Outside, the bells of a street vendor rang. The spicy scent of peppercorns drifted through the window. But I knew this summer was ending. So I kissed him like time was running out. I wanted to carve him into my heart, brand him into my bones, so I would never ever forget. I asked Ming through the closed door if he had time to attend my graduation ceremony at the academy. He gave a soft, dismissive excuse. I don't know. I think I took a client's commission to find a lost cat tomorrow. If you don't come, you are dead meat, I threatened through gritted teeth. He chuckled. How will I die? I will never want you again for the rest of my life. A long silence stretched from the other side of the door. Finally, he gave his verdict. You are right. That is a fate worse than death. I still didn't know if he would actually show up. But I was the top student in the academy, chosen to give the valedictory speech. My tuition was paid with the blood money Ming earned fighting in underground death matches. It was the silver he saved by secretly eating cold scraps and pickled vegetables for a solid month. It was everything this man, my brother, had scraped together from hellish conditions I couldn't even fathom. I just wanted him to know his sister finally made something of herself. But when I stepped onto the stage, a massive sea of people stared back at me. I hadn't seen Ming before coming up. I had no idea if he was hiding somewhere in that dense crowd. Still, I mentioned him in my speech. Asterisk, thank you to my brother. Without you, I wouldn't be here today. Asterisk, I figured he didn't even hear it. He probably really did go look for that client's cat. I could afford to be a little more understanding. After all, when everything was tallied up, I still owed him my life. I stepped off the stage. Someone blocked my path. At first glance, he looked like a love-struck fool trying to give flowers to his sweetheart. Then I realized that fool had Ming's face. I froze. That was the first time I ever received flowers from Ming. His collar was slightly open. He clearly rushed over right after meeting a client. He probably even turned down a massively lucrative job. He leaned down and smiled. Hey you. I wasted my money on these peonies. You are much prettier than the flowers. In the 15 minutes it took Ming and me to walk through the crowded academy corridors, I counted exactly 27 female students stealing glances at him. 3 bold girls even came up to ask for his name and address, treating me like completely invisible air. I started thanking the heavens Ming never enrolled here, or I would have had a legion of noble heiresses as rivals. Many classmates were hiring painters for commemorative portraits. I tugged his sleeve. Ming, let's get a portrait drawn too. I rarely ever had my likeness captured beside him. In the past, I thought there was nothing worth remembering with this obsessive madman. This was the first time I genuinely wanted to preserve a piece of us. He looked down at me. The emotion surging in his eyes was dangerously hot. I was slightly relieved we were in a crowded academy. I pulled a familiar junior student over to quickly sketch a simple portrait of us. Handing the scroll back, the girl beamed. You and your lover make a perfect match. Thank you. I didn't deny it. I think my lover and I are a perfect match too. When I called him my lover, his eyes looked like they wanted to devour me whole. That's the first time you've said that. Said what? The summer breeze swept across the bustling courtyard, fluttering his robes. Ming had never been a part of my academy youth, yet he made my heart race 100 times faster than any brilliant scholar who had ever crossed my path. Just 100 steps away from the noisy academy, in a quiet, narrow alley, the summer wind blew through. Ming pinned me against the brick wall and kissed me senseless. That was the first time you called me your lover. He breathed heavily against my lips. Sweetheart, I have waited so long for those words. He kissed me until my legs nearly gave out. Life seemed to be entering a perfect golden era. Ming and I both kept our mouths entirely shut about a certain looming event. We woke up in the mornings, and he held me from behind as we washed up, the bronze mirror reflecting our intertwined figures. We went about our separate days. Sometimes, he would pick me up with a fresh bouquet of white magnolias. Sometimes, I would bring him my latest culinary experiments to taste test. Ming joked that I was repaying his kindness with poison. Later, the torrential plum rains of midsummer arrived, pouring relentlessly. Our plans to travel south were violently derailed. Frustrated at the weather, I threw a tantrum at Ming. He just pulled me into his arms and coaxed me to sleep. I actually dozed off against his chest. When I woke up, the heavy rain was still thrashing against the windows. The sunset bled into the raindrops, and the red lanterns lining the street flickered on one by one. Ming hadn't moved an inch, holding me in the exact same position. Still angry? He rasped, brushing the hair from my forehead. I tilted my head up and kissed him. Idiot. One night I came home early. It was Ming's birthday and I wanted to surprise him. I snuck into his study. Calling it a study was a stretch. It was more like a storage room piled with case files and junk. It used to be my old study room, but now Ming used it for his shadow investigations. I was about to hide his birthday gift in a secret compartment. When I pulled the drawer open, My eyes caught a stack of rice paper on the corner of the desk. It was an ordinary stack, but someone had clearly pressed hard while writing on the sheet above it, leaving faint indentations. I stared at the charcoal pencil rolling nearby. Driven by a morbid curiosity, I grabbed the charcoal and lightly shaded over the impressions. His handwriting slowly materialized from the dark dust. September 17th. Demolish. It was the exact date the government was scheduled to tear down our old house. My heart plunged into a bottomless, icy abyss. No one knew what earth-shattering secret was buried inside that old house. In my past life, I hadn't even lived long enough to see the authorities tear it down. But now, as the date closed in, the impending doom dragged my terrified heart down with it. A calm, quiet voice suddenly snapped me back to reality. You? What are you doing? Ming leaned against the doorframe, his gaze serene. Ming! Panic seized me. I ripped the shaded paper off the stack and crushed it into a ball. He stared at the crumpled paper in my fist. What's that? Let me see. I casually tossed it into the wastebasket, walked over, and threw my arms around his neck. Ming looked down at me. His eyes were like the clearest, most pristine glass in the world. How could I bear to let them shatter? I stood on my tiptoes and ground my lips against his. He let me do whatever I wanted, his hands naturally dropping to support my waist. Happy birthday, Ming, I whispered softly. I handed him his gift, an album filled with the portraits we had commissioned. Ming and I solemnly placed it on the display shelf. Only 2 pages, he remarked with a self-deprecating smile. We'll fill it up. I grabbed some ink and a brush. Ming stood beside me. Behind us, a red candle flickered on the desk. He rested one arm on the table, and I leaned my head against him. Smile, Ming, I said. He pulled up the corners of his mouth. That was his 26th birthday. That day I was still by his side. Honestly, I had been greedy for every single day I spent with him. But September 17th felt like a death warrant. It was slowly devouring whatever time we had left of our summer. September 16th, the day before the government would bulldoze our old courtyard. I went straight to the magistrate's office. Ming was conveniently out of the city on business today. I snuck over entirely on my own. I had already sent a message to Investigator Wong. Well, little girl, you haven't come looking for me in a while. His voice was as composed as ever, acting like he had everything under perfect control. Investigator Wong, I am turning myself in. I thought I had just dropped a massive bombshell. Any investigator should have been instantly on high alert. Instead, he didn't slap me in iron shackles. He invited me to the back room for tea. Investigator Wong, did you hear what I just said? I said I'm turning. He stopped in his tracks. The youth these days. Do you view the laws of this empire as a child's game? I stared at him in shock. A confession requires hard evidence. Proof that you actually committed murder. Do you understand? The setting sun cast long, endless shadows across the stone steps. He stood at the top, glaring down at me. For a second, his gaze pierced me like a broadsword. I steadied my breathing and spoke every word with absolute precision. My adoptive father. My adoptive mother. I killed them both. When I was 12 years old. I sealed their bodies inside the mud walls of our old house. The proof is, tomorrow when the estate is leveled, you will find their remains. We locked eyes in a suffocating stare. I despised eyes that saw right through people. They were too sharp, too piercing. I preferred Ming's. Whenever he looked at me, he was always gentle. How fascinating. The older man finally chuckled. I couldn't laugh. The guillotine of justice was finally making its judgment, punishing the girl who had once abandoned her brother. You siblings are just taking turns confessing, aren't you? Except, your brother beat you to it by a day. My blood ran cold. Ming, little girl, your old house is being torn down today. Not tomorrow. Your brother lied to you, didn't he? The world spun. He was locked in the dungeon yesterday. Right now, he's at the estate with the coroner, examining the crime scene. The forensics report is about to come out. Why don't you come with me? Let's see who the real killer is. No wonder. Ming never left the capital for jobs, yet he suddenly had to travel. No wonder he didn't push to see what was on that crumpled paper. He deliberately left it out for me to find. No wonder he stared at me so intensely during lunch yesterday, like he wanted to burn my image into his retinas. He honestly believed he was never going to see me again. I had no idea how I got into the official carriage with Investigator Wong. I had no idea what he said to me on the ride over. The wind howled past the silent streets. For the first time in my life, I genuinely wanted to break Ming out of prison. They said autumn had finally arrived. My summer was gone. My birth name was Lu Yuyu. The human trafficker said it was embroidered on my swaddling blanket when they snatched me. I was 3 years old when I was sold to my adoptive parents. A girl? She's just a money pit, my adoptive mother sneered. You're offering too little silver, the trafficker argued. She's a girl. She's not your flesh and blood. You can work her to the bone. And look how pretty she is. You can sell her to a brothel for a massive profit when she grows up. Plus look. She doesn't cry. She doesn't fuss. Let me tell you a secret. I snatched her near the academy district in the city. She's got scholar's blood in her. The trafficker pitched me like a cheap piece of meat. My adoptive parents kept haggling. Finally, the trafficker played their last card. Your lost son is named Lu Ming, right? What a coincidence. This girl's name is Yuyu. Yuyu cries the deer, Ming is the sound it makes. This girl will summon your biological son back to you. My adoptive father spat on the dirt floor and rubbed his nose. What a load of bad luck. My son is named Ming because the damn rooster in our yard never crowed on time. If she were named Goose, I might believe she could bring him back. But they bought me anyway. Because I was cheap. And because that animal I called a father scanned me up and down with a vile, filthy look. He squeezed my arms and calves. She's not blood. Heh. Once she grows up a bit. People usually forget what happened when they were young. But my memories were burned deep. I just remember being in constant pain. Sometimes it was the sharp sting of my adoptive mother viciously pinching and beating me. Sometimes it was the tearing agony of the courtyard guard dogs chasing and biting me. Sometimes it was just starving. Cramping, unbearable starvation. When I was 8, they found Ming. Yes, Ming was their biological flesh and blood. That night, my adoptive mother threw me in the woodshed to sleep. That was where I saw him. He didn't look much better than I did. He was covered in filth. But his eyes were stunning. I had never seen eyes so beautiful. He looked exactly like his mother. Ironically, I was actually attached to my adoptive mother. Sure, she kicked and beat me. But she gave me leftovers. In my tiny universe, the concept of a good person didn't exist. The woman who fed me was the best thing I had. I hated Ming. Because after he returned, she wouldn't even give me a mouthful of spoiled rice. I literally fought the livestock in the yard for scraps of food. Later, Ming started secretly sharing his coarse grain buns with me. I am your brother, he said. I had never been taught how to speak properly. I just mimicked his tone, making an incomprehensible sound. I hated Ming. Yet I instinctively clung to him. He stole everything from me, but he was the only reason I survived. One day I quietly reached out and held his hand. I watched the young boy's pupils dilate in shock. He was 13, I was 10. I had no idea what kind of broken, empty, obsessively dark emotions he harbored for me. All I knew was that he topped the county exams. He was clean. He was nothing like me. I hated him even more. But when that man smashed a wine jug across my back, dragging me by the hair to slam my head into the mud wall, when my body was covered in scabs that were ripped open and scabbed over again, Ming was the only one who pulled me into his room and applied medicine to my wounds. His freezing fingers traced the gashes on my back. I looked up at the cold moon outside the window. That night, Ming held me tightly in his arms. I didn't know what kind of terrifying decision the 15-year-old boy made that night. The wretched rural hut constantly reeked of pungent odors. My daily life was a living hell. My adoptive mother picked up strange, addictive habits. My adoptive father dragged me out of the house to beat me senseless. Ming remained dead silent through it all. I only remember one specific day. I was gasping on the floor after a brutal beating. One of my teeth broke, landing in a pool of bloody spit right at Ming's feet. I looked up at him. "Save me," I pleaded. Ming's pupils violently trembled. I resented him for standing there doing nothing. But I didn't understand. Those were his real parents. They were the ones bound by blood. When my first period came, my adoptive mother was absolutely thrilled. "You can finally go sell your body and make us silver. Aren't you happy?" she cackled. She was completely unhinged. She hid in her room every day, snorting that white drug powder. My adoptive father was completely mad, too. He lost constantly at the underground casinos, pawning off every single item in the house that could fetch a copper coin. The world was utterly twisted. In that churning, chaotic hellscape, Ming was the only clear, living thing. He earned a top scholar's stipend from the prefecture academy. He was brilliant. I only felt safe when I was in his arms, yet I still bitterly blamed him for not saving me from my suffering. I didn't know he had been secretly plotting something for an entire year. My adoptive father gambled away all the money and finally mortgaged the old house to loan sharks. He wanted to borrow even more blood money to build a smaller mud hut. That day, my adoptive mother was unusually sweet to me. "You remember those erotic paintings I showed you?" she cooed. "Do exactly what they do in the pictures, and you'll make mountains of silver, understand? You'll earn money to build mommy and daddy a massive mansion." I honestly didn't understand she was forcing me into prostitution. I didn't know how humiliating it was. How dangerous. How utterly depraved. They knew I was clueless. But a primal, sickening terror rose from the pit of my stomach. Because my adoptive mother forcefully pinned my body down. She forced me to my knees in front of my adoptive father. The drunk, degenerate gambler stared down at me. The crazy woman was so high on drugs she had lost her mind. She did whatever her man told her because he gave her drug money. "Let your dad test if you learned your lessons well, okay?" She tried to force me to use my teeth to unfasten his belt. I fought like a cornered animal. I was so terrified, even though I didn't fully comprehend what I was terrified of. The world flipped upside down, flooding with thick black ink. Ripping. Tearing. Agony flared in my skull. My adoptive mother was brutally tearing out chunks of my hair. I felt another tooth crack as my adoptive father smashed a wine jug into my temple. Everything was collapsing. Shattering. I didn't understand. Were humans put on this earth solely to suffer torture? I screamed at the heavens. Why? Why me? What sin did I commit? It hurts. Do you have any idea how much this hurts? But no one in this world cared if I hurt. Ming returned from the academy and pushed the courtyard door open. He walked in on the carnage. My adoptive mother was forcing drug powder up my nose. My clothes were nearly ripped to shreds by my adoptive father. Smashed wine jugs littered the floor. My palms were impaled on sharp porcelain, gushing blood. This world was truly hell. For me and for Ming. When did my adoptive mother let me go? When did my adoptive father drop his hands? I didn't know. All I knew was that my vision turned completely red. Warm blood splattered across my bare skin. Outside, someone was setting off fireworks. Inside, the blood-curdling screams of two adult beasts ruptured my eardrums. I felt nothing. I couldn't comprehend why they were screaming so horribly. It was just physical pain. I went through it 1,000 times a day. I stared blankly at Ming. The wood-chopping axe dropped from his hands. Damp, warm blood sprayed through the air. It coated my eyelashes. I blinked slowly. Ming's face was completely devoid of emotion. He told me to step back. "If the guards investigate, I can't let the coroner find any trace of you here." His voice was so terrifyingly calm. He sounded like he was just cooking me a bowl of noodles. As if this was the most mundane day we had ever spent together. That night, I washed the blood from my body and changed into my best dress. I sat by the wooden table. We scrubbed the house spotless inside and out. I placed a wild flower in a chipped porcelain vase. Out in the yard, Ming mixed yellow mud and lime to build a new earthen wall. Once everything was handled, Ming patted my head. I understood. The next day, I ran to the magistrate's office, crying hysterically as I beat the drum for justice. "Guards! My mom and dad haven't been home for 2 days. I'm so scared. Did my adoptive parents vanish? Were they dead?" Ming and I knew absolutely nothing. Ming was 19, I was 16. He told me he would find a trade to support me. But he never breathed a word about the fact that right before he stepped through the courtyard gate that day, he had crushed his admission letter to the Imperial Academy and shoved it into his sleeve. A loud firecracker blasted me back to the present. Was there a festival in the city today? They were setting off fireworks. I tilted my head back, watching the brilliant explosions light up the sky. The light rained down on everyone's faces. It rained down on the river of torches held by the guards. Ming. He wore heavy iron shackles, escorted by a guard with a drawn blade. He stood just a few feet away. Our old house was mostly demolished. Guards and coroners swarmed the site, cataloging evidence. Did Ming see me? I didn't know. He could always spot me instantly in a sea of people. Outside the courtyard where I tutored. In the corridors of my graduation. I took a few steps forward. The torchlight hit my face. Ming had the most unforgettable eyes I would ever see in my lifetime. He was a lunatic. His love for me was despicable, sick, and twisted. He was the kind of man who would lock me in a courtyard on a whim. He was the kind of man who obsessed over me since he was 12. Turn back. Just turn back. Forget the feel of his body holding you. The whispers in the dark. The tangle of your kissing lips. Turn back, and none of these sins will have anything to do with you. But why was I so completely, hopelessly, madly in love with him? I walked faster. Then I bolted. I sprinted past the layers of blazing torches, tearing through the falling embers of the fireworks. The crowd roared around me. The night wind howled. Ming stood on the high steps, his hands bound by dead iron. I threw myself at him. Kissed him. Our lips crashed together as clusters of fireworks rained down. Honestly, I was already drowning in a bottomless swamp. Ming was the only star shining in my dark abyss. You have to let me kiss him on my way to eternal damnation. Because he is my only star. The guards rushed forward and violently tore us apart. Ming kept his eyes lowered. He didn't speak a single word to me. I looked like a crazy woman harassing him in broad daylight. Your brother is trying to keep you from being charged as an accomplice. Investigator Wang sighed, standing beside me. I stared at the fading fireworks in the night sky. My adoptive father almost raped me, I whispered. My adoptive mother forced me to inhale drugs. Tell me, didn't they deserve to die? Or is my brother the only one who deserves death? Why didn't your guards arrest them? Because you bureaucrats are all incompetent garbage, Wang. He ignored my treasonous outburst. A life for a life. That is the iron law of this empire, he stated. I deeply regret that I couldn't throw those two animals in a cell years ago. But whether they deserve to die or not is decided by the law of the land. Right. How wonderful. I rested my chin in my hand, staring out the carriage window. The flowing torchlight ignited the pitch-black night. The law. Why isn't there a single law in this world that protects a brother who fought to the death to save his sister? No one answered. I lowered my eyes. After a long silence, I turned to the investigator. My brother is clinically insane, I said flatly. Can the law grant him leniency? I couldn't help but notice how much weight Ming had lost. Since he walked out of prison, he had grown increasingly cold toward me. It had been 3 days since I brought him back to the estate. Maybe the brutal years behind bars had ground him down. The bright, clear aura he once had was gone, replaced by a chilling, desolate edge. Just past dawn, Ming woke up exactly on schedule. I had my maid wake me early, terrified he might leave without a word. I rushed to serve him a bowl of plain porridge. Thank you, he said. He actually thanked me. Even during the most strained, bitter moments of our past, he had never said those words to me. I stood frozen, watching him eat with rigid, mechanical precision. My mother walked out from the inner courtyard. Ming, are you settling into your guest room all right? Yes. I had found my biological parents. Ming was sentenced to 7 years of exile for manslaughter. The coroner's report and the reinvestigation of the crime scene had finally revealed the truth. The lethal wounds on my adoptive parents weren't from a wood-chopping axe, but from the razor-sharp shards of a shattered wine jug. The coroner concluded that my adoptive mother, heavily hallucinating from drugs and sheer panic, suffered a total psychotic break. The blood found on the fatal wound of my adoptive father belonged to her. The truth was she went completely mad, murdered him, and then collapsed onto the broken porcelain, bleeding to death. Ming and I suffered fragmented, distorted memories because the sheer brutality of the bloodbath had fractured our traumatized minds. That, combined with the lethal drug powder my adoptive mother had been forcing down my throat. Ming kept a clean record in prison. When the emperor declared a general amnesty, he was released 2 years early. During those 5 years, thanks to investigator Wang's relentless searching, I was reunited with my biological parents. They were both highly revered scholars at the Imperial Academy. For over a decade they had never stopped looking for me. The moment she saw me, my mother crushed me in her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Only then did I realize that even though I had been abandoned, abused, and trampled upon, I was still the fiercely loved flesh and blood of parents who dreamt of me every single night. They treated me incredibly well. They placed every rare treasure the world had to offer right at my feet. For the first time, I lived in a massive estate with elegant pavilions. For the first time, I bathed in a warm spring pool, tended to by gentle maids. And when they learned about my deep bond with Ming, they didn't look down on him for being an ex-convict. They never tried to keep us apart. I thought our suffering had finally come to an end. The day I picked him up from prison, I chattered endlessly. I found my real parents. I have a real family now. Ming, I passed the imperial exams. I'm going to work as a court scribe next month. And his reaction? Over the past 3 days, he had spoken exactly 4 words to me. Asterisko. Good. Thanks. Asterisk. I felt like I was suffocating. This wasn't my Ming. The old Ming would smile at me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He would coax me, whispering soft, desperate devotions in my ear. But now? He hadn't even told me he missed me. A knock sounded at the guest room door. It was him. I thought he was finally coming to surrender, to finally tell me what was on his mind. Instead, he stood there in dark traveling clothes, a packed bundle slung over his shoulder. You say goodbye to your parents for me. I've intruded long enough. I'm leaving. He was actually leaving. Leaving. I was standing right in front of him, and he was just going to walk away. My chest tightened like a fist was crushing my heart. I shook with rage. Where are you going? I demanded. Home, he replied, keeping his eyes down. No, Ming. This is your home, too. I gripped his sleeve like a lifeline. Since you've found your real parents, stop calling me your brother. His icy tone stabbed straight through my heart. You are not my biological sister. I choked on my words. Well, I'm still your fiancé, aren't I? I yanked his cuff. I refused to believe he would deny this. This was the man who once lost his mind with joy just because I called him my lover. A heavy silence followed. Slowly, he peeled my fingers off his sleeve. I was in a dark cell for 5 years. 5 years of absolute silence. What fiancé? I stood paralyzed, staring at him in utter disbelief. Ming, what the hell is wrong with you? I flared with genuine anger, a dark, suffocating panic rising in my throat. You've been acting insane since you got out. You. I never expected him to push me away. It wasn't a violent shove, just a firm dismissal. But I was blinded by rage and unsteady on my feet. I stumbled, crashing into the doorframe. As luck would have it, a sharp, splintered piece of wood jutted out from the aged frame. My arm scraped hard against it, tearing a long, deep gash into my skin. It looked horrifying. Beads of blood rapidly welled up and spilled over. Ming's eyes widened in violent shock. His hand shot out instinctively to catch me, but I viciously slapped it away. Get away from me! I screamed. You are dead set on abandoning me, aren't you? He froze, forced to endure my scathing accusations. Did you figure it all out while suffering in your cell? Decided I'm just a burden? Not worth ruining your life over? So you're throwing me away? You heartless, pathetic bastard. Get out. I don't want you either. Get as far away from me as possible. I never want to see your face again. I hate you more than anything. But inside my heart was breaking. That wasn't true. I thought about you every single day and night. You aren't a bastard. How could I ever hate you? They were all lies fueled by anger. I always used these vicious, soul-crushing words to test him, to desperately verify if he still loved me as much as he used to. But this time, Ming just stood there. The light in his eyes completely died. Then he turned around. He actually walked out the gate. He walked away without looking back. He really didn't want me anymore. I collapsed onto the stone floor, completely unable to understand why he was being so cruel. I couldn't understand why freedom had turned him into a stranger. Tears spilled over, splashing onto the floor. If anyone else in the world made me cry, I could choke it back instantly. But when it was Ming, I couldn't stop. The fourth day after his release, we had zero contact. Where is Ming? He didn't come back yesterday, my mother asked softly, sitting beside me on the soft couch in the sunlit parlor. Hearing his name caught me off guard. My nose stung. He doesn't want me, I mumbled, resting my chin on my knees. Probably had some grand epiphany in prison and realized I'm not good enough for him. My mother reached out and gently rubbed my back. I don't think that's it at all. When people witness someone else's perfect happiness, they can't help but feel utterly inadequate. You told me about Ming's childhood. I think seeing you find a good home forced him to look at his own broken past. What if he truly believes, deep down in his heart, that he is the one who isn't good enough for my precious girl? I lifted my head, staring at her in shock. That boy looks at you with roots of love planted so deep, she continued. But his eyes are always filled with an unshakable sorrow. Perhaps to him, watching you from afar is better than forcing himself into your life and dragging your reputation through the mud. Her words hit me like a revelation. I fell into deep thought. She patted my shoulder and pressed a carriage pass into my hand. Do you want to go bring him back? Go give him some courage. In this world, there is no such thing as unworthy in love. To me, you are a priceless treasure. Whoever you choose is the perfect match. Where could Ming go? Where was his sanctuary? The fading sunset bled across the dilapidated alleys. His only refuge was the old rundown house where we had relied on each other for over a decade. I gripped the brass key. Pushing the peeling wooden door open, a heavy stench of alcohol hit my face. Was Ming drinking himself into a stupor? In all my memories, he never drank like this. I slipped off my embroidered shoes and navigated barefoot through the clutter. I came here every month to clean, so it wasn't too filthy. Several empty wine jugs were scattered haphazardly around the table. The man slumped against the table, his eyes glazed with drunkenness. I approached him. My gaze fell on the object he was clutching in a death grip. It was our portrait album, the last birthday gift I gave him before my supposed wedding. I reached out and shoved his shoulder. Get up. He squinted at me through a drunken haze. I sat down right in front of him, staring directly into his eyes. Why don't you want Yu anymore? His eyes instantly flooded with red. I didn't abandon her. I didn't. Stripped of his defenses by the alcohol, he looked unusually frantic and lost. He stared at me with hollow eyes. Then why did you leave her behind? Because she doesn't need me anymore, he mumbled softly, his voice soaked in a wet, broken rasp. She doesn't need me. If she insists on staying with me, people will stab her in the back with their gossip. They will judge her. A noble young lady lowering herself to marry a convict. Can't be like this. It absolutely cannot. She deserves a bright, glorious life. I leaned across the table, my fingertips gently brushing the messy hair from his forehead. What if she doesn't care about any of that? Ming struggled to keep his eyes open. But the world cares. I absolutely will not let my sister bear the weight of those filthy rumors, suffering baseless judgment and humiliation. I cupped his cheeks in my hands, staring deep into his soul. Yu loves you. Ming let out a low, self-deprecating laugh. What does that matter? That was only because, in the past, I was the only person in the world who cared for her. She had no choice but to cling to me. But now she has parents who adore her. She has a noble home. She has so many people cherishing her like a jewel. This broken, bullet-riddled love of mine, I can't even offer it anymore. I'm not worthy of her. I felt like my Ming was physically shattering into pieces. Why didn't the stench of alcohol disgust me at all? Why was I still so hopelessly addicted to his scent? I held his gaze and spoke every word with absolute conviction. But the only place I belong is wherever you are. He gave a miserable smile. No, it's not. I forcefully tilted his chin up and crashed my lips against his. As our mouths tangled, his eyes snapped wide open. A fleeting moment of clarity seemed to pierce his drunken haze. He finally realized the person in front of him was actually me. I'm dreaming again. I heard him whisper like a man delirious. Yes, it's a dream, Ming. Do whatever you want to me. He grabbed me and violently pinned me against the table, devouring my mouth. I heard his feverish whispers against my ear. pouring out everything he had held back. Asterisk, I missed you. Don't leave me. I love you. Damn it, how did I fall so hopelessly in love with you? Asterisk. All the desperate confessions I had dreamt of hearing from his lips. He poured them all out to me in his drunken haze. In the dead silence of the late autumn night, countless times in the past, within the cramped walls of this exact room, Ming and I had endured endless, suffocating dark nights together. The night wind brought a chill into the boundless black. But my star was ignited once again. Sparks of light pierced through the void, sending ripples through the dark, pulling me down into the sweetest dream. The next morning, Ming tried to pull the exact same trick. Fully dressed, he was ready to slip away like a ghost. I slammed a piece of paper right in front of him. He stood stiffly by the bed, his face a mask of cold indifference. But that paper held his drunken confession from last night, signed and fingerprinted under my strict orders. Black ink on white paper. Every desperate, obsessive word he had poured out to me. Yu, I love you to death. Please don't leave me. I raised an eyebrow at him. Ming, have you completely lost your mind? Since when do you wear two different faces for day and night? His deep, pitch-black eyes locked onto mine for a long, heavy moment. Finally, he let out a helpless sigh. Then he lunged. He pinned me hard against the mattress. In one fluid motion he wrapped the heavy quilt tightly around me, trapping me completely beneath his weight. Lu Yu. From this day forward. His voice was dark, a promise carved in stone. Even if you regret it until your dying breath, don't even dream of escaping me ever again.
Ming finally surrendered to his dark obsession, trapping Yu exactly where she always belonged. It's the ultimate twisted happily ever after. But I have to ask, if you were Yu, would you choose the dangerous obsessive man who would burn the world for you or walk away for a safe, normal life? Let me know in the comments. Smash that like button and subscribe to Moonlit Love Stories. An even darker romance is waiting for you. See you in the next one.